Coming up on The World Today. American gymnast and four-time Olympic gold medalist Simone Biles withdraws from the individual all-round final in Tokyo. Russia beefs up its Tajik base, warning of Islamic State militants moving into neighboring Afghanistan. Plus, hepatitis can't wait, so says Global Health Initiative, UNITAID, on this World Hepatitis Day. We begin with breaking news here in Nigeria. The Kaduna State High Court has discharged and acquitted the leader of the Islamic movement in Nigeria, Sheikh Ibrahim El-Zakzaky, who was accused of culpable homicide, disruption of public peace, and unlawful assembly, among others, brought against him and his wife Zina by the Kaduna State government. Justice Gideon Kurada upheld the no-case submission filed by El-Zakzaky's counsel, Mr. Femi Falana, arguing that the witnesses presented by the prosecution counsel had been unable to establish any connection between the charges and Sheikh El-Zakzaky. The judgment came about 8 hours after the court commenced sitting on the matter earlier today. Sheikh El-Zakzaky and his wife Zina had been standing trial at the court for the past 4 years, facing the charges. The lead counsel to El-Zakzaky, Mr. Femi Falana, had insisted that all the 15 witnesses presented by the prosecution counsel had been unable to establish any connection between the charges and Sheikh El-Zakzaky. El-Zakzaky and his wife had been in detention since December 2015 following a bloody clash between his followers and soldiers in Zaria. While the sit-in lasted, security remained tight within Kaduna metropolis and its environs, with all roads leading to the High Court complex, which was barricaded by security operatives. Meanwhile, in the Tokyo 2020 Olympics, American gymnast and four-time Olympic gold medalist Simone Biles has withdrawn from tomorrow's individual all-around final in Tokyo. The 24-year-old most successful U.S. gymnast of all time said she had to focus on her mental health after pulling out of the women's team final on Tuesday. The head of the U.S. Olympic team and fellow athletes praised Biles' decision to prioritize her mental well-being. Biles reached a 5 individual finals in Tokyo. She was due to defend her all-around title on Thursday before competing in the finals of the vault and uneven bars on Sunday, August 1st, the floor on August 2nd, and beam on Tuesday, August 3rd. Let's move to China, which U.S. scientists say is expanding its capacity to store and launch nuclear missiles. A report from the Federation of American Scientists says satellite images from Xinjiang in the west of the country suggest that it is building a nuclear missile silo field. U.S. defense officials have expressed concern about China's nuclear buildup as a second new silo field reported to be under construction in western China in the last 2 months. U.S. defense of the site, could house about 110 silos, which are underground facilities used for storing and launching missiles. In another development, prosecutors in Sweden have charged an Iranian with war crimes over the mass execution of prisoners in 1988. Though he has not been named, he's been identified as a 60-year-old Hamid Nouri. Back in 1988, Iran was at war with Iraq. Iran's supreme leader ordered the mass execution of prisoners linked to an armed opposition group allied to Iraq. The suspect was working in a prison near the Iranian capital, Tehran. Prosecutors revealed that to us, but his lawyers told news agencies that he denied the charges. Human rights groups have long campaigned for justice over the executions across Iran, in which an estimated 5,000 people were killed. Prosecutors were unable to invoke the principle of universal jurisdiction for serious crimes to bring the case. And in Afghanistan, Russia says it's beefing up on combat capabilities of its military base in Tajikistan and training local soldiers there, warning that Islamic State militants are moving into neighboring Afghanistan. A Russian Defense Minister, Sergei Shoigu, who was in Tajikistan today for talks, said the security situation has rapidly deteriorated in the country amid a U.S. troop withdrawal. And that withdrawal has prompted Moscow to prepare for a potentially major security challenge on the edge of its Muslim-majority Central Asian backyard. In particular, Moscow has expressed alarm over what it has described as the growing strength of Islamic State elements in northern Afghanistan. Shoigu says that Islamic State fighters are moving into Afghanistan from Syria, Libya, and several other countries. Meanwhile, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has described attacks by the Taliban on civilians as U.S. troops pull out of the country as deeply troubling. He made the comment in New Delhi following talks with Indian leaders. Is warned that if the fighters take power and commit atrocities, the country will become a pariah. It says the only path to peace in Afghanistan is through negotiations, which all parties must take seriously.
Today, yes, certainly what we're seeing on the ground in the last week is the Taliban making advances on district centers, challenging some provincial capitals. We've also seen these reports of atrocities committed by the Taliban in areas that it's taken over that are deeply troubling, and certainly do not speak well to the Taliban's intentions for the country as a whole.
Today is World Hepatitis Day. This year's theme is Hepatitis Can't Wait, as Global Health Initiative UNITAID calls on all countries to work together to eliminate viral hepatitis as a public health threat by the year 2030. Experts say a hepatitis-free future is achievable with a united effort.
Hepatitis C is a blood-borne virus that can lead to serious liver damage, including cancer, when left untreated. However, treatment is hampered by the lack of awareness and inadequate access to diagnostic tools. Worldwide, 58 million people are estimated to be infected with hepatitis C, yet only 21% receive a diagnosis. An estimated 290,000 people lose their lives to hepatitis C-related causes each year. Progress in recent years has revolutionized treatment, making a cure now possible in just 3 months for more than 90% of people treated. Treatment lasting up to 1 year could cause serious side effects and have cure rates of around 50%. But treatments have little effect if people don't know they're infected. To combat this problem, UNITAID has driven the development and scaled up simple diagnostic tools and demonstrated how to use them to improve their access by at-risk groups and through local clinics.
We are already seeing encouraging progress that shows us that meeting World Health Organization targets is possible. Since 2015, hepatitis C-related deaths have decreased by more than 25%, and the total number of people infected has fallen from 71 million to 58 million today. Thanks to the work of UNITAID and our partners, we now have the tools we need to fight hepatitis C and achieve these goals, but there's no time to waste. Certain pioneering countries, such as Egypt and Rwanda, are already making this happen. As the COVID-19 pandemic continues to strain health systems in resource-limited settings, it's more essential than ever that we bolster our progress against hepatitis C and avert preventable disease.
In 2016, the World Health Organization set a target for hepatitis elimination as global health threats by 2030. UNITAID is a global health agency engaged in finding innovative solutions to prevent, diagnose, and treat diseases more quickly, cheaply, and effectively in low- and middle-income countries. It's now applying its expertise to address challenges in advancing new therapies and diagnostics for the COVID-19 pandemic, serving as a key member of the Access to COVID-19 Tools Accelerator.
Joining us now is public health consultant Dr. Nsiabasi Ekanem. He's here to shed more light on the theme, which is hepatitis can't wait. Dr. Ekanem, great to have you in the studio.
Thank you very much for having me.
Well, hepatitis is nothing to celebrate, but help us understand the theme for the year.
Well, the theme for this year is hepatitis can wait. We can wait. The reason why we adopted that theme is the fact that we have waited for too long, for far too long, and the numbers are increasing every year. And we could quite recall that in 2016, the World Health Assembly had already said that, had declared hepatitis as a public health emergency of international concern, and then called on member countries, to put in commitment, towards addressing this pandemic. A disease that is affecting 325 million people across the world. I mean, it's not something that we should wait any longer. Well, the pandemic, yes, the COVID-19 pandemic came, a lot of setbacks came in because of the pandemic. But now we're saying that, well, we just can't wait anymore. We need to face this squarely. And we have a target of 2030 to eliminate hepatitis from the world. How do we achieve that? The only way we can achieve that is not to wait any longer, but to start addressing some of those issues in terms of diagnosis, treatment, and prevention. We need to address them now. Member countries must make tangible investment towards ensuring that people living with viral hepatitis across all countries have access to diagnosis, access to treatment, and for those who are not yet infected, they have access to prevention, which is through birth dose vaccination.
Yeah, so apparently most people, the reason why it appears that, there's more cases of hepatitis is either there is a misdiagnosis, because sometimes it presents like other ailments, other everyday ailments, and then there's also the misdiagnosis. So how can we improve on this?
Well, the way to go here is to urge everyone to go for hepatitis B testing. Like you rightly said, there's a lot of misdiagnosis when it comes to hepatitis because it shares the same symptoms like with other diseases like malaria, typhoid fever. A lot of persons, when they have these symptoms, for example, they have fever, they have nausea, vomiting, loss of appetite, sometimes abdominal pain. These symptoms are similar to, of course, malaria and the typhoid that we commonly suffer. So they will just feel, it's malaria. No need to go for a test. I'll just go to the pharmacy, pick up an anti-malaria drug, or maybe probably an antibiotic, and I'm fine. So you keep seeing people year after year treating malaria and typhoid, not knowing that they have hepatitis.
Could that also be the fault of the hospitals too? Because most times when you come explaining these symptoms, the first thing is to suggest a malaria test.
Exactly. So most times it's the fault of also prescribers. The moment you start mentioning the symptoms, they first of all feel that it's malaria. Yes, we understand that malaria is endemic in Nigeria, but at the same time we need to carry out proper diagnosis so that we know what the issues are, because when hepatitis is detected early enough, it can be treated and patients can recover very well. But when it is led probably due to mixed diagnosis from the part of the patient or the part of the clinician, then it becomes quite challenging, and most times patients will now present with hepatitis when it's too late.
At this point, I think it's important to ask, how hepatitis is contracted.
Well, it's very simple. Hepatitis is contracted through very clear modes. Number one is mother-to-child transmission. So a pregnant woman who is hepatitis B positive, there are chances that she may transmit the virus to the child, whether during the pregnancy or during the childbirth. Again, blood transfusion is another way. I mean, a patient or an individual who is transfused with blood that has been contaminated with hepatitis B or C virus will likely come down with the virus. Again, children-to-children transmission is very common now. So you have a child who has maybe a bruise or so, another child that has a bruise maybe at the playground, in the school, they can be playing together, and then that contact can actually cause it. Now, indiscriminate sharing of sharp items is one of the. So whether through clipper, in barbing salon, or is it through nail cutter, is it through razor blade, this indiscriminate sharing of these sharp items can also be a mode of transmission. And then syringes. Sometimes you see people may want to repeat syringes. And of course, injection drug users, people that use illicit drugs, you see them together. This one will use the syringe, pass over to this other one. So this indiscriminate use of sharp items is also a very, very significant mode of transmission of viral hepatitis. And that is why we're saying that the way out is to get people vaccinated, because vaccination is the insurance policy. It gives you that innate immunity to be able to withstand the virus if one is exposed to that virus.
Yes, so in addition to the COVID-19 vaccine, we should also try to get vaccinated against hepatitis B.
Exactly.
Dr. Ekana, many thanks for being here with us.
Thank you so much for having
and sharing light on this.
Thank you.
You're still watching The World Today. Still ahead, we have more on the testimony from the policemen who were in the investigative hearing yesterday at the Capitol, discussing their experiences in the January 6th riot. Stay with us. Welcome back to The World Today. More from the testimonies being collated at the U.S. Capitol months after the January 6th riot. 4 policemen present on that day, warding off rioters, have told lawmakers they were beaten, taunted with racial insults, heard threats including kill him with his own gun, and thought they might die as they struggled to defend the U.S. Capitol. Often tearful, sometimes profane, the officers called the rioters terrorists engaged in an attempted coup during a 3.5-hour congressional hearing. They also criticized Republican lawmakers who sought to downplay the attack. It was a dramatic first hearing for a Democratic-led House of Representatives committee tasked with investigating the worst violence at the Capitol since the British invasion in 1812.
One of the scariest things about January 6th is that the people that were there, even to this day, think that they were right. They think that they were right. And that makes for a scary recipe for the future of this country. So I think that's why it's very important that you all take this committee seriously and get to the bottom of why this happened, and let's make it never happen again.
Representative.
Could have heard more of those testimonies. Our correspondent in Washington, Maria Bird, kept an eye on all of them. Maria, thanks for joining us, and I'm sure many emotional moments. I caught a glimpse of much of that on Tuesday. Many emotional moments for those police officers describing the frightening situation they had to face on January 6th. What more are we learning about the instigation for the riots and how officers handled themselves?
Thank you, Amarachi. You are correct. This was an emotional moment. I think it just had America and the world relive that January 6th event, but not only relive the event, but saw it through the eyes of those who were actually on the ground, the officers who were there trying to protect the congressional members, trying to protect the democracy of the United States. And so what you saw yesterday was really the heartbeats of those individuals who were there on the grounds, and seeing how it is still impacting them almost over 6 months later. We are now in July, and you can still see the pain that they experienced on that day. And so what this is really giving insight into is really what was actually happening while the individuals were invading the Capitol. We also saw that there were racial undertones that were brought forth as a result of those individuals moving in on the Capitol and trying to take it over, and seeing that this was not just about trying to stop democracy. This was also an issue of racism in America, which we know has been an ugly beast that Americans have been trying to combat for quite some time. So I think this is going to begin to broaden the scope of this investigation and begin to broaden the scope of really what was the intent and what actually occurred on that January 6th Capitol riot.
It's interesting, that the House is really interested in all sides, of this investigation. We've heard from, people who were there. We heard from all of the lawmakers who were present that day, who had to all scamper into safety, thanks to some of the police officials who were there at the Capitol building who led them to safety. And now we're speaking to the police officers. So this is getting first-hand information how they dealt with this. So will there be more testimonies coming in the next few days?
I think we can definitely guarantee that by August, we will begin to see more testimonies. The chair, Thompson, has already stated that the 7-week recess that typically occurs with Congress in August, they can be assured they will probably be called back a little early, some members, to be able to have an additional hearing. And also, they will not be asking for any voluntary written letters. They will be going straight to subpoenas and be subpoenaing individuals to provide testimonies as a result of this. I think the real intent at this time is going to be to see if there's anything else that needs to be investigated and to see if there's anything else that they don't already know as they move forward to address justice, and also to be able to address the issues we know that Republicans have stood on the grounds of protecting blue, which blue is considered in America to be the police officers. But are they really protecting blue when you see these officers that are obviously being trampled over by those individuals who stormed the Capitol?
Yeah, and I know that, the House, the Democrats and even the lawmakers are being careful, skirting around the issue of, the role that the former president played in all of this. But what would be justice at the end of this investigation?
I think justice at the end of this would be to be able to identify what the intentions were, to be able to identify the individuals from a standpoint of those who should be prosecuted and should actually be going through some sort of justice system, whether that means jail time, whatever that means according to the state of law in the United States or the various states they live in. So I think that is another intent, and to ensure that this is not able to happen again. I think that is really the number one focus, is that we do not see, as you mentioned earlier, we have not seen this since 1812. And so to ensure that this is not something that becomes a frequent occurrence in the U.S. that could potentially really put a strain and threaten the democracy.
Well, got to learn from modern history so it does not repeat itself. Maria, thanks again for speaking with us, and do stay safe.
Thank you for having me.
A member of the Joint Committee on Vaccination and Immunization in the UK says the science backs up the government's decision to change rules for fully vaccinated travellers from the US and the European Union. From Monday, people who have been fully vaccinated in the EU or in the United States will not need to isolate when coming to England from an amber list country. Here's more on the situation globally.
In a huge long-awaited boost for airlines and travel companies, England will allow fully vaccinated visitors from the EU and United States to arrive without isolation from next week.
We've always said we need to move in line with what's going on in the real world. And obviously, people being vaccinated in Europe and in America now means that we can move to that next stage, which is allowing people to come here. And if they are double vaccinated, avoid having to quarantine as long as they've taken a test before they leave and after they arrive.
Meanwhile, British Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab warns that the world will not be vaccinated until 2024 on the current rates, and urges other countries to join Britain in donating shots to poorer nations to bring that date forward to the middle of next year.
So we've led internationally as well by promoting and pledging 100 million doses from our surplus domestic vaccine rollout to the poorest countries around the world. The first 9 million doses will go out on Friday. Countries from Laos and Cambodia, vulnerable countries, strategic countries like Indonesia, Malaysia, Commonwealth countries from Jamaica to Kenya. And that's because we recognise the importance of making sure everyone's safe. We won't be safe until we're all safe. But also, we're demonstrating Global Britain as a life-saving force for good in the world.
Speaking of vaccinations, Tanzania's President, Samia Suluhu Hassan, received her COVID-19 vaccine in public today, in the most decisive signal yet of a break from the policies of her late predecessor, John Magufuli, who repeatedly dismissed the threat of the pandemic. At the launch of the ceremony, President Samia urged all Tanzanians to get vaccinated. In other developments, Indonesia has recorded 1,824 virus deaths following a record of 2,069 on Tuesday. The country has become a COVID-19 epicenter in Asia, with record infections and deaths this month. It has experienced 3.29 million and 88,659 deaths in total. And finally, Australia's biggest city, Sydney, has extended a lockdown by 4 weeks after an already protracted stay-at-home order failed to douse a COVID-19 outbreak. Authorities warn of tighter policies to stamp out non-compliance.
And that's the word today. Don't forget to wash your hands and wear your face masks. Thanks for watching.